This computer. All right, here we go with yet another interview with our command team. One of our very first folks on the command team, Jacki Quinlan. Hi, Jackie.
Hey,
And
Ricky.
yay, hey. And to everyone that's listening, you've probably seen or saw some writing I've done already on the importance of what Jackie brought to the program in the very beginning. I'll let her touch on some of it, but the administration part of the program really got a hefty lift when she came on board. Things like the head count sheets and par cues being combined with surveys, really, really intricate things helped propel the program essentially to where it is now. I don't think if we had your expertise in the beginning, we'd have had the longevity that we have now.
I
And I
appreciate
say
that.
that
That
with
means a
all the
lot.
sincerity that I can muster. I mean, like, she really did her thing. So, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jackie. The same questions that everyone else has had, and wherever else she wants to go. You have the
Cool.
floor.
Thank
Mhm.
you, Ricky.
You're
It's
welcome.
interesting when you were pointing out some of the things I might have brought to the program because I've remembered saying in the past, like I'm sort of like the behind the scenes person. Like Ricky's out front, like he's actually doing a lot of the work in the community and with the Warriors. And I was certainly it's not to say I wasn't. I was at training days. I was leading sections, but a lot of my work was behind the scenes. And we like referred to me as the paperwork queen for a while because
Yes,
I was
yes, that's
always
right.
on top of that paperwork, making sure
Yeah.
that part's key. Like, you can
Mhm.
do all the good work in the community that you want, and lead amazing classes. But if at the end of the day, if you can't show what the work was and how many people you reached and how their lives were impacted, then, um, you know, it's not to say it didn't matter. It did matter, but in terms of trying to get funding and be able
Mhm.
to report out on what you're doing is important. So
Mhm.
thanks
Mhm.
for reminding me of that. So I'll give a little caveat. It's been, I don't know, maybe a year and a half since I've been in the day to day of Fitness Warriors.
Mhm.
At some point during the height of the pandemic, when sports backers went through and had a couple of layoffs, we shifted we shifted some of our staffing around. And so essentially at the time I was my official title was director of community outreach. And as a part of my team, Tiffany Copeland, who's now the program director, I'm sure you all have gotten a sense of that, but she was the program manager. And so she, for at least a year at that point, had been working on the program, maybe more. I don't remember all how the pandemic
Mhm.
has
Mhm.
shifted our understanding of years. But,
Right,
uh,
yeah.
you know, we internally had to figure out like how are we going to make all of this work now that we have less staff. And so it was a
Mhm.
no-brainer to promote Tiffany into being the director of the Fitness Warriors. I mean, she was a fitness warrior herself. I mean, it was ideal to like have a fitness warrior leading the program, and leading the sports backer side of the program, the admin
Mhm.
piece.
Mhm.
um, and that allowed me, as I worked alongside Tiffany, to get her into that position and make sure she felt comfortable with the new role. But always the idea was that I would be there to support her, but that it was hers now. It was her baby.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that allowed me to focus on other aspects at sports backers that needed some attention, primarily our youth programming. So I'll say all that to say,
Mhm.
I'm excited to talk about this. I don't get to talk about Fitness Warriors every day anymore like I used to. And so this is, pretty special to me. And I'm hopeful that my memory gets
Mhm.
us going in the right direction. But when I think about back to the
Mhm.
beginning, so I've been with Sports Backers for 8 years. So I started in August of 2014, which is really interesting because that's right around the time that the very first class was starting with Fitness Warriors.
Mhm.
And I was brought on to basically to do outreach work for sports backers, but primarily in the Kids Run RVA program. And so I was not necessarily brought on to work on Fitness Warriors.
Mhm.
Um, but as I, got on board and started hearing what was happening, and at the time Ruth was on staff, and leading the charge from the sports backers team, I, of course, it piqued my interest. I'm like, what is this all about? In fact, my supervisor at the time had met someone from the community who wanted to meet with me about what Sports Backers does. And I knew part of what she was interested in was fitness warriors. And I had this like freak out moment where I was like, how can I go meet with this lady? And I don't know anything about this program. Like I haven't, to me, it's one thing to read about it on a website or, to hear a little bit about it, but to go out and really try to talk to someone about it, I feel like I have to know more. So I remember feeling really uncomfortable in that initial meeting that I had with this community member, because I'm like, I'm trying to describe this program that I don't know anything about. Like I don't know the Warriors. Like I'm not in the trainings. So I did my best, but then I remember saying, Ruth, like, do you need some help at the graduation? So I've been on board maybe like 4 or 5 months now, and the first graduating class is coming up. And she said, really, it'd be just great if you can help out and just be there at the graduation ceremony to help set up, but just also to see it. And so I was so excited to be there firsthand and, get to see the sort of the ending of this amazing experience that I had heard about. Well, that I missed the majority of the graduation, because at that very first graduation, we had someone in the crowd. We invited lots of our participants that year. So it was the Warriors, and if they had some loved ones they wanted to bring, but certainly they were, encouraged to bring their participants as well. So the participants were there, and there was someone that was just displaying some really odd behavior, just sort of like, honestly, I thought this person's been drinking, right? Like, so they're starting to disrupt during the ceremony. They're starting to disrupt what's happening, because they're sort of like screaming out and saying things. And so I remember, I don't even remember which warrior it was, but it was like a warrior and I sort of helped that person out into the hallway just so that the ceremony could continue. And you all could celebrate what you were there to celebrate, and we could try to handle that situation. Well, it turns out the person was having something with their diabetes, was their and there was a nurse, a T's mom was there. It was a nurse and was able to come out and recognize it for what it was, whereas my mind was thinking drinking or, maybe some kind of mental health crisis, and she knew exactly what it was. And ultimately that person ended up needing medical care. But I remember being glad that I could help in that way, but also like I missed the whole graduation ceremony dealing with that situation. And
This is the
key,
lady. This is the first time we had to get a emergency contact information from
well,
someone.
so key
Right.
point
Okay.
being,
Mm-hmm.
once I tried to put everything together, like, who is this, like, which class did they go to? I'm thinking like, we got to figure out who this person is. And my understanding, if I remember correctly, mind you, this is like 8 years ago. It was someone who lived in RRHA housing, so Richmond Redevelopment Housing. And I feel like it was maybe one of the senior homes. And so, but we didn't have that person's information on us, and that was a first time for me. I was like, like I always think from like a risk perspective. And so thinking, I just realized that day, I'm like, well, it's great that participants are here, but any participant that comes, like those warriors should have brought that paperwork with them, or we as a program should have said, we have this on hand, and we know how to access their emergency contact information, because we had it, but that was probably all filed away in an office somewhere.
We
Just
were still, everything was paper then. Yeah. Right. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
everything was
I remember
paper.
that.
So for some of my initial like memories, and that person was fine. The person got the medical help that they needed, and it all worked out fine. And everyone had a great graduation ceremony. I just happened to not really see very much of it. But then fast forward, and I remember Ruthie getting pregnant. And so the real reason that I got heavily involved was because Ruthie was going out on maternity leave, and we knew going into that second class, and I don't remember the exact timing or transition, but I remember by second class, I was all in. Like, I mean, I don't know if she was already out or we knew she was going out, but what I do remember is after that first experience of leading second class and being really hands-on and being in it and working really closely with you, I remember telling my supervisor at the time, I said, I don't want to give this back to Ruthie when she comes back. Like, she doesn't get to have this back now. Like, I love this.
Mine.
Yeah, the idea was that I was just going to fill in while she was gone, and take
Right, right.
her role.
Yeah.
But no, once I got in it, I was like, oh no, there's no going back now. And it all worked out to where,
Yeah.
Ruthie was fine with sharing that role for a little while. And then
Mhm.
eventually, she got busy and doing other things at Sports Backers. And so I did get to stay in that role for quite a while.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, it
Mhm.
was definitely something that it was never like it never, even though it wasn't the plan when I was originally hired, it was sort of like just, dropped in my lap, and that's just sort of how it worked. I immediately, like, I wanted it to be a part of my daily work
Mhm.
with Sports Backers. I wanted to be a part of this program. Um,
Mhm.
so,
Showed. It showed. Yeah.
oh, well, but then, the other side was like, who am I to lead this program? Like, I really felt that way. I had done
Mhm.
program management for years, and mental health. And I had
Mhm.
done lots of, like the program that I'd worked on previously, for the 8 years before I came to Sports Backers was in partnerships with schools, was in low income communities. So it wasn't, that piece wasn't foreign to me at all. But
Mhm.
honestly, the fitness side of it was what was sort of foreign to me. I mean, I was active, I ran marathons. It's not to say I understood fitness to that as a personal, like, fitness.
Mhm.
And I had
Mhm.
done lots of work in the youth space, so like leading and creating youth run clubs. But
Mhm.
who am I to be a part of teaching these adults how to be fitness instructors and how to get engaged, how to get other people involved? And so I remember immediately saying, well, if they're going to do ACE, so am I. Like, if they're, if their expectation is that after they've gone through this initial training, they're going to go through it in the third phase at that time,
Mhm.
and take ACE. I was like, I'm going to be right there alongside them,
Mhm.
learning ACE just like they are, learning how to, officially be a group fitness instructor.
Mhm.
Um, and I
Mhm.
did. I mean, I learned right
Yeah.
alongside them. I had to, scared to death to take that test, but luckily passed. um, it definitely, especially when it got to the ACE side of things, I just felt like, of course, you knew it, but I just felt like it's not fair for me to get to have this role in this program without having that base knowledge and having gone through it myself.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, there was definitely some feelings in the beginning, like, why me? And I wonder if, as other people are thinking about doing this in other places, if they might have the opposite, like they might have the fitness component, but
Mhm.
just as much as it is about fitness and leading group
Mhm.
exercise, is it's program management, and it's volunteer management, and it's community
Mm.
outreach and community
Mm.
organizing. And so all of
Mhm.
that stuff, I was like, I feel good about this. The
Mhm.
fitness
Mhm.
stuff, like, I'm not the expert in that. And to this day, I'm still not the expert. I mean,
Mhm.
Ricky is, that is like, he's the expert in the room when it comes to that. But you also don't want to be leading something that, you really have no understanding of.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I do think about that, like, it is a unique mix of skills to be able to have I understand the community that I'm serving. I
Mhm.
understand how to manage a program. I understand how to manage volunteers.
Mhm.
And I'm also this, like, I'm a certified fitness instructor, so you have to have both sides of that, or
Mhm.
you have to have at least two people that can complement each other,
So,
which
mhm.
this is, essentially what Ricky and I feel like, tended to do really
Mhm.
well.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
not just, I mean, both of us had a little bit of both, right? We were,
Mhm.
a lot in one area and some in the other, but,
Mhm.
I sort of tended to do that program management piece more, and
Mhm.
left his expertise to what he, I didn't
Mhm.
get up there to try to show them exercises. Like, why would I when Ricky's in the room? Like, so anyway,
But she would do them.
oh, I would do them. I'd be right alongside them. Hey,
Yeah, yeah.
cursing him all the time.
Yes.
um, I don't know. I feel like I've been talking a lot. So
No, that's good. I like the way you segued or intersected the for people who are going to duplicate the program, what they need to have, like both sides. You need the admin, you need the fitness, and you need the community engagement thing. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and at the very minimum, just, you know, uh, at least with the fitness side, there is I mean, you have the practical side, like you're actually doing the stuff, but then there's a whole curriculum out there. You can get certified, and that doesn't really exist in program management and community outreach. And so it's not as clear cut of how do I get that experience? How do I'm not aware of any course that you can go take that's like, this is program management 101, or here's how you get, I'm sure it is out there, but most people don't really have that, like haven't had that formal training. But the best thing you can do is just get out there and do it. Like if you're not sure of how to do community organizing or how to do community outreach, like the very first step is just start to get out into the community, start to experience, get to know the community you're serving. I mean, that is the initial step. Start talking to people, start talking to people who do know the community and have that and can tell you what it's going to be like to try to recruit volunteers in that community. What are the challenges you're going to face? What are you going to have to provide as resources to be able to get people through this program? Are they going to have transportation? What are those challenges in that neighborhood? You figure that out by talking to people. And we shifted. So I'll go back. I remember when we first started the program, we were heavily centered in the East End that first year. And then the second year we opened it up, and we were, I think it was second year that we opened it up. I don't know that we had gone down to the Tri-Cities yet. I can't remember. I know Taliba was the very first warrior. I think she's third. I'm pretty sure. But that second year we were beyond just the East End. I know we were having classes in other parts of the city. But early on, I knew, I was like, we need to be down in the Tri-Cities. From my former work, had done quite a bit of work in Hopewell, Virginia, and knew that they were dealing with a lot of the same issues that Richmond was. So, for me, that was certainly something that I had on my agenda when I got my seat at the table for Fitness Warriors. Was like, we need to be down in the Tri-Cities. Like, why isn't this work spread down there? And initially thought of it being like a very separate thing. Like I remember in the beginning thinking, we'll have this like Fitness Warriors in the City program, and Ricky will be the lead of that. And then we'll have a whole separate program in the Tri-Cities, and we'll find the Ricky of the Tri-Cities to lead that. Like that was how I thought about it in the beginning. But as we started to make those decisions, we're like, no, it can be one big program. And like Ricky is the leader of the whole thing. We just got to figure out how to get folks from the Tri-Cities to us and move our trainings also down to the Tri-Cities, which we hadn't done. But I did come in with that motivation to let's get out and talk about this program down there, and let's go out and do an info session. And we did that first info session at the Petersburg Public Library before the third class. I remember very clearly and being really happy with how many people were there, knowing like, okay, there's an interest here. And then Taliba applying and getting in, and really having your first warrior from the Tri-Cities is what helped it grow. I mean, certainly, getting some experience there. I don't know where I was going with that, but that just thinking about
that shows how the program can blossom. Right?
Yeah.
No matter where you are, like if a program starts in South Carolina, they can be in a centralized location, whatever the city is or county, but they can spread out and develop into the larger area of the state, as time goes on. They have to be willing to do it, but yeah.
And some of the challenge that came with that third class, because I am definitely a let's grow, let's build, this works, let's take it out. Like that's what motivates me. I like to see numbers. I'm like, okay, great. We have 10 classes. Like, why don't we have 20 classes per week? Like, I want to see growth. I want to be doing more than what we're currently doing, which can sometimes you just try to grow too fast. And I remember distinctly at the end of, well, I say distinctly, and I'm like, I don't remember what class it was. I think it was third class, though. I think it was third class where because I think second class there was 26. Gosh.
Third class was 35. I'll never forget that.
It's third class is 35.
35.
And so that was partly because I'm like, let's go, let's build it. Like we can fit 35.
I was down with it too. I was like, yeah.
So we were thinking about it from the logistical side of like, okay, we had all these applicants and we were still being picky about who was in. It wasn't, I mean, we were, like making sure that people actually had a passion for the work and, wanted to
just start group interviews then with the third class, or was it? after that?
when we started that. I don't remember.
I'm gonna take a look, but
We
that
gotta
might
look
have been
back
our
at that.
first.
But
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, because the group interviews
Mm-hmm.
did get added on later.
Mm-hmm.
But what I remember was saying, yeah, like we were making the decisions of how many people we could have in the program based on how many we thought we could fit into a training room. And,
Mm-hmm.
it was like, okay, we think we can handle this.
Mm-hmm.
And I recall that at the end, and we were doing the feedback session with third class. So towards the end of their training, we
Mm-hmm.
always do a survey of the warriors to
Mm-hmm.
tell us
You
what
get a
worked, what
survey.
didn't, what to
Mm-hmm.
do, what was
Mm-hmm.
how can this program be better, in the future. Um, which has really guided all of the changes that have happened in this program have been guided by the
By
feedback from the
that.
warriors, which we have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of pride in because you're doing what's
Mm-hmm.
right for the community because it's the people in the community and the people leading the classes that are giving you the insight.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember distinctly there being a couple of warriors saying like they didn't know everyone's name in the class, like the training class. So like there were
Yeah.
warriors who didn't know other warriors, and I was like,
Right.
we've gotten too big. Like some this
Mm-hmm.
because if you don't have those connections, if you don't have a solid peer group within the warriors program, it's just so hard. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not work that you want to go out and do on your own and never be able to like lean on someone else for support. You have
Mm-hmm.
to have other people
Yeah.
that are pretty close in your circle that you can hit up and
Mm-hmm.
talk to and practice with and vent to and all of those things. And
All of that.
they didn't even know each other's names. And that, some of them I was like, okay, we got
Mm-hmm.
to scale this back a little bit. Like we have to,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just about how many we can fit in the room. It's about how many can we successfully work with to build a group cohesion within
Mm-hmm.
the
Right.
class.
Right.
So yeah, then we scaled it back a little bit and,
Mm-hmm.
and there's
Mm-hmm.
also on the flip side, we've had classes that were so small.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe one was like 7 that graduated.
Sixth class.
Six,
I think it's
six,
six or seven
six,
class. One. Yeah.
7,
Yeah.
6. I don't know, but it was
Yeah.
6 or
One or
7 people
two.
that graduated, and
Mm-hmm.
it's nothing against those 6 or 7. They were doing the good work, but that
Mm-hmm.
to do this program is a lot of time and investment from the leadership, and you want to get enough of the outcome in the community, right? Like you want to get it, so if you're only training 6 people, you're putting in, a whole year's worth of work pretty much. And the
Mm-hmm.
outcome is you get 6 people that are out leading the classes, but you know that there's going to be some, people are going to fall off over time, right? So out of those 6, how many are still with it a year later? And so
Right.
you start to see that there is this like happy place of like, it needs to be more than 6 and less than
Mm-hmm.
35. You got to find that
Yeah.
happy spot of like,
Yeah.
and I think it seems to me that like 15 to 20 has been like our sweet
Mm-hmm.
spot.
Right.
um
Right.
it
Mm-hmm.
seems to be like where the group really gets to know each other and can really bond with you and Tiffany and with each other, with their captains. um and you're adding 15 more classes to the schedule every single week. You got 15 new classes, and say if you just get 10 people a week in each of those classes, that's 150 more people like every week, getting active. And so it that tends to me, that number has been our sweet spot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. See, that's good for them to hear. What?
Yeah,
That would be on the quiz. What is the sweet spot number for your training classes?
I
Yeah.
think it's 15, man. I think it's 15.
Yeah.
I think you can get up to 20, but anything beyond 20 is
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
it's too many.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's a way to do it. I mean, but with our model and like the way we've had captains and mentors over the years,
Mm-hmm.
that's been a challenge of ours, is figuring out that captain mentor component. And
Relationship.
you
Right.
know, you, in order for them to really be able to form those strong bonds within
Mm-hmm.
our structure, we put them in crews. And so now you
That's
take
it.
that group of 15 or 20, now they're in a group
Mm-hmm.
of 3 to 5, and they're
Mm-hmm.
meeting on a more regular basis, and they have this, a direct person that is an extension of command, their captain, because if they're only trying to talk to Jackie or Ricky, we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to serve everybody, not just the current class, but all. And so having
Mm-hmm.
those captains to be able to focus on that current class and their small subset within that current class gives them
Mm-hmm.
what they needed. And when we didn't
Right.
have that as a strong component in the beginning, we've always had mentors, but
Mm-hmm.
figuring out that those mentors actually were important enough to the program that they needed to be paid. They needed to be called
Right.
captain, and they needed to be
Yeah.
paid. because
Yeah.
we needed them, and we needed them to
Yeah.
stick around. We needed to retain
Mhm.
them,
Yeah.
and it was worth paying them in order
Mhm.
to get that
Mhm.
level of support.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
It's
interesting.
very
I barely talked at all about the actual admin stuff, like the paperwork.
well. Actually, you kind of like admin is all of it,
It is
really. I think so.
paperwork.
We touched on the cruise when I spoke with Ebony last night, um, and she used the term of the captains as having spider tentacles out into the community and the warrior program and the crew breakdown, how important it was. So for you to touch on it too is really good because it does make it easier for people to get together if they connect with the cruise. Because sometimes they don't connect with the cruise either. But it does
True.
make it easier for the connections to happen. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Um, yeah, so I got a memory came up while you were talking.
Okay.
Um, a couple actually, but the one that you probably heard me tell this all the time when I talk about you, is when I first met you at Fairfield Court,
Yeah.
and if this is the projects for those who don't know, this is the hood area. Um, I was outside. I think David was looking for his sister, one of the little boys from the Boys and Girls Club. Forget her name, but he was concerned. Where is my sister? And I was about to go, walk in the cuts to look for her with him. And you were like, "I'll go with you." I think you had just met. Like I'm Jackie from Sports Backers, and you're Rick. I'm like, yes, I'm getting ready to do this now. You can come. And you came along, and I looked at you like, are you okay? I'm walking around in the hood. I didn't say it, but you're a white girl. And
Yep.
I didn't know your
Pretty
background
white
then.
here.
I didn't know you had already spent time teaching at what's the name of the school? Black and
Oak Grove.
by
Oak Grove Belmead.
Oklahoma felt me. I didn't know that. Had I known, I'd been like, oh yeah, come on. You go by yourself over that side. I'll go to this side. But just to see your comfortability, I think is the right word, in that setting. I mean, that let me know right there. Okay, she's with it. I like talking this way sometimes, like kind of shifting off into the Ebonic, not so polished vernacular, because that's how I communicate with the community. And hopefully, there are people who are going to be listening to this course who are like me, who can do like the different speech code switch. You can talk to your community and you can talk to the so-called administrative community and help them to understand what they need to understand, but really get across to the community what they need to know. So having someone like Jackie who can move back and forth in those, I want to say arenas or areas, is important. Um, yeah, so make a concerted effort to look for a Jackie.
Well, and just
Mhm,
yeah, you just
mhm, mhm.
it's for me, it's because I had worked in the community for many years before coming to Sports Backers, and so I was comfortable. I used to have to do home visits and things down in Hillside, which is the South Side version of Fairfield Court.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
I
mhm,
just I've worked in those communities pretty much ever since graduating, but it's also just part of who I am, my upbringing. I mean, I just grew up
mhm,
very poor, and so poor doesn't equate to the same experience as what a black child in the neighborhoods that we were in is, but it does
mhm,
give me some level of like, this isn't foreign to me. Like this is very
mhm,
similar to what I grew up in. And so
mhm,
I think getting to know the person that you're trying to, or that you think will be working on a program like this, knowing their background. Is there any, do they have experience working in underserved communities? Did they grow up in an underserved community? Like what,
mhm,
are they going to be able to authentically connect with
mhm,
the people that you're trying
mhm,
to serve? And so, but it does help, us knowing that about you, knowing that about me,
mhm,
um,
mhm,
I think was really helpful because I didn't get the chance to walk through Fairfield Court with every warrior. So not every warrior that I worked with knew that about me, or even ever really got to see me in the community. They saw me at a YMCA during a training day or at a sports
right,
backers coming to pick up paperwork. And so they didn't know that side of me whatsoever.
right.
And maybe it comes through, for some and they pick up on it, but also
Mhm,
just having Ricky know that about me and being able to,
mhm,
I think it helped that they could see that we had a good relationship, and you
Mhm.
weren't having
Mhm.
to, like, pretend to be something different around me.
Mhm.
Like, I think that helped, you sort
Mhm.
of saying like, she's good. Helped,
Mhm.
because there's certainly, our
Mhm.
program is predominantly African American instructors. And so
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
sure there were ones who were like, who is this white lady, leading
Yeah.
this program? Like, this program is
Mhm.
geared is for us, by us. Like, why is
Mhm.
she? And
Mhm.
so, and that's something that I struggled with. I mean, there were certainly times where it's like, yeah, again, why me? Like, but um I was in that position, and so I had to make it work, and the best I could do is just to be authentic and be exactly who I was. And so we've had other folks come through from the Richmond City Health Department over the years, and usually their time on the command team was usually about a year, or a couple of years, just based on their role at the Richmond Health Department. And so we've seen a lot come through, and there were ones that I never got a sense of who they really were, and they never really connected with the Warriors.
Mhm.
And there were others that, just as lily white as I am,
Mhm.
maybe not the same, well, I'm pretty sure not the same background, but they were just who they were. Like, they didn't try
Mhm.
to be anything different. They didn't
Right.
try to act like they knew everything about the communities we were
Mhm.
serving. I'm thinking of KC in particular.
Okay,
Like,
okay.
KC is just one that really stuck out to me. Is like, you might initially look at her. I think I did. I initially was like,
Mhm.
this is not gonna work. Like, this is not gonna fit in here. And she absolutely did. But part of it
She
is just
absolutely did.
being who you
Mhm.
are, and
Yeah.
knowing your limitations, and being open to learn, and
Mm.
being aware of your privilege. And like, so
Mm.
even if you don't, it's hard to find someone who has that exact niche of like, I've worked in these communities, or I grew up in this community. It might be hard to find that. But if you
Mhm.
can
Mhm.
find someone who can just truly be who they are, and be open to other perspectives,
Mhm.
and let those other perspectives guide the work that you're doing. Like, don't come in
Mm.
saying I have all the answers, right? Like,
Mm.
as we made decisions about how to change the program, if it wasn't a
Mhm.
feedback session or a survey, it was, we were pulling together at one point, I don't know if you remember, those quarterly strategic meetings. That was
Mhm.
something that I implemented on
Mhm.
a quarterly
Mhm.
basis. We were pulling together groups of warriors and other people from the community to help
Mhm.
guide
Mhm.
our next steps. Like, we're thinking about
Mhm.
thing, but and
What
I
do
might
you
have thought
think?
it was the best idea ever. And
Mhm.
but we weren't going to do it unless the warrior said that's the right thing to do. So
Mhm.
you have
Mhm.
to just be open to not
Mhm.
making all the decisions unilaterally. You
Yeah.
got to be able to listen to the community,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
not just listen, but actually act on what they're telling you.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm. That's good. Those are
yeah.
questions right there. They're going to be on the exam. This is.
So I guess I
Mhm.
think about some of the challenges with the program. It's been so much
Mhm.
fun over the years, and so much
Mhm. Mhm.
positive outcomes. And I have so many good
Mhm.
friends, like, especially now that I'm not in the day to day, and I'm not really
Mhm.
managing the
Mhm.
volunteers. It's a little easier for me to get to just be friends with them, which is great.
Mhm. Mhm.
So much of it is positive, but man, there are challenges that come along with doing this kind of work. Certainly, like, you don't want to get into it thinking that it's all going to just be rosy and beautiful and fun, and it is. It's going to be all those things, and there's going to be the times where it is just like a struggle. So I think about some of my biggest challenges. Firing volunteers. You got to get
Mhm.
comfortable with being able to fire volunteers. um,
Mhm.
that was really uncomfortable for me at first.
Mhm.
But I remember having raised guidance on one of those situations. You called
Mhm.
me, and I
Mhm.
can't remember the exact situation, but it was,
Mhm.
it was a volunteer who had gone out in left field and was really just
Mhm.
being a problem, and had specifically, caused you a lot of challenge. And I remember you calling me. I was outside somewhere. It was a
Mhm.
Saturday or a Sunday, and we were talking.
Mhm.
And I remember we had already knew that something was. I mean, there was already issues, but you called, and it
Mhm.
was like the final straw. I was like,
Mhm.
this isn't gonna work. Like,
Mhm.
but I didn't know what to do, because I'm like, it's
Mhm.
a volunteer. Like, it's not as simple
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
just doing disciplinary action. But I
Right.
remember
They're not
calling
getting
Ray.
paid like yeah.
Yeah, don't
Right.
return. Um,
Right.
but and it's not funny. I mean, it's sad, but there, you know, if you get this many people together in a room, 20 people, it doesn't matter if they're paid or volunteer. There's going to be an issue that comes up when you put 20
Mhm.
people together in a room, and you know,
Mhm.
and you're expecting a lot out of them. Things are going to come up, and so you got to be ready for that. But I do remember calling Ray that day, and I was like, I don't know how to handle this. Like, you know, what do you think we should do? Because, you know, I'm just not sure. And he was like, you got to put it in writing. It doesn't matter that they're a volunteer, but you know, like you can
Mhm.
tell them, like, we don't have to work with anybody, right? So like,
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, we want to work with everybody, but at the end of the day,
Mhm.
there will be some people that just don't fit in, you
Mhm.
know, or
Mhm.
fit or meet our expectations, or
Right.
the program just isn't a good fit for them,
For
and
you,
we're
that's
not a
the
good fit
term
for
we
them,
used to
and they,
use a lot. Yeah, we
and
do.
you
Yeah.
know, he's like, that's okay, but he was like,
Mhm.
put it in writing, like write them a letter,
Mhm.
write them an email. And that was one of
Mhm.
the, I think, best piece of advice that he gave me, just like making me feel
Mhm.
like, okay, it is okay to move in this direction, because I just
Mhm.
wanted to try to make it work so bad, like I was trying so
Mhm.
hard to make it work.
Mhm.
um, but I remember having to put that in writing and say, like, you know, thank you so much for your interest, but I think it's best that we move on. But I, you know, to his point of, you know, getting that done in writing, essentially it was firing a volunteer, and I had to get comfortable with that. It didn't happen often. You know, usually when there was someone that, you know, didn't make it through the program, it was because they made the choice. Like, you know, it wasn't
Yeah.
working with their schedule anymore, or,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
it was more intense than they thought it would be. As much as we
Mhm.
tried to explain that up front, that is going to be your best thing you can do, is outline every expectation, every training
Mhm.
day from the very get-go. From the moment they get into that application, they see it all. Okay, I'm gonna have to commit to this and this and this. Oh, they want me to lead a class every week and go to trainings twice a month and blah blah blah. You need them to
Go to the
know right up
captain
from the get.
class.
Yeah, yeah, going to the
Mhm.
captain's class. You got to let them
Mhm.
know what you really are
Mhm.
going to be asking. It needs to be crystal clear.
Mhm.
That right there will weed out anyone who's like, oh, this is too much for my life. Like, and that's okay. Like,
Mhm.
it is a lot.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you
Mhm.
weed those people out then. But even though we tried to do that so much, there were some times where people were just like, it's too much, or their life scenario changed. And so it was fine
Mhm.
before, now it's not. Most of the people, that was how it went. You know, if they left, it was because of that. But there
Mhm.
were a few where like they were so passionate about doing the work and being a part of the program, and yet they had so many problems, you know, throughout, of not being able to meet the expectations. And we
Mhm.
were pretty dead set on, like, these are our expectations and you got to meet them. And if we did, we had to be fair about it. You can't make
Right.
all these volunteers check off all the boxes, and this one's checking
Mhm.
half the boxes and getting the same
Mhm.
accolades, right? Or the same,
Mhm.
you know, experience. And so,
Right.
you know, a lot of it came down to that, of like, dude, we're
Mhm.
trying to work with you. Like,
Mhm. But
you
you
know, you
always
just,
late, and you always late.
so, but that part can be hard because, you know, I know for
Mhm.
me, I didn't want to be that bad guy. And at the end of the day, they're all really good people. Like, anyone who wants
Mhm.
to do this work has got a good heart for the most
Mhm.
part. Like, you haven't
Mhm.
experienced, you know,
Mhm.
you get really good people that you get to meet, but they have to be good, and they got to do the work. And if you're not
Yeah.
doing the work, at the end of the day, you can let them get through the training program, but if they've missed a lot, um,
Mhm.
if they're already missing during training, then they're going to be missing when it's time for them to leave their class. And
Right.
so we had to learn that, like,
Yeah.
we're not just
Yeah.
being mean, we're making sure that what we put out in the community is going to be sustainable. They're going to be a dependable volunteer.
Mhm.
And
Not gonna hurt anyone. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, so,
Mhm.
but yeah, that was one of the challenges for sure. I remember that
Mhm.
pretty distinctly.
So I'm thinking of, not mentioning names, but a captain having a problem with a crew member who was
Mm,
making them cry, essentially. And we had to come in and have a heart to heart with the crew, the captain, and that particular person, and it boiled down to we had to ask them to leave.
yeah,
And
I remember
and
that
this is
too.
on the same level of do you might remember this, third phase, calling people to let them know whether they've been accepted into ACE or not. The
Gosh, yep,
first time we
absolutely
did
that.
that, oh my God, I was ready to cry. People hanging up, like, are you still there?
That's true. Oh, yeah, yeah, you're right.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
because we did it all by phone call that evening. And ooh.
Yeah, and so back in the day, that was,
Mm-hmm.
so it used to
Mm-hmm.
be that they sort of immediately moved from phase 1 to 2 to 3, and we would check in with them in between, and
Mm-hmm.
sort of like, all right, you're
Mm-hmm.
good to go, like move on to phase
Mm-hmm.
2, move on to
Mm-hmm.
phase 3, which was the ACE phase.
Ace.
And
Mm-hmm.
but we learned that well, we decided that it made sense to actually really find out who really wanted ACE, so a lot of times we were saying yes, move on to ACE, and we're passing people on who had met the expectations, but at the end of the day, they didn't really even really want ACE. Like they didn't even fully
Mm-hmm.
understand what that meant, because
Mm-hmm.
again, we didn't use that application to help educate them. So when we
Mm-hmm.
added in that application, it made our jobs a lot easier, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't us just trying to pick out of the group who gets to go and who doesn't. It became much more like uh, unbiased, I think, truly, because we were asking questions, and we had more to go on. Like,
Did
we
you
were telling
meet
them,
these things? Right.
are you gonna be able to
Mm-hmm.
do this? Are you gonna be able to put in 10 hours a week of studying, And so it
Mm-hmm.
gave them a like, oh wow, 10 hours. Like, whereas before, we might have said it, but they didn't see it in writing. And then when we did the application, we got a lot of people who just didn't apply too. They were like, no, I'm good right now. Like, I don't want to do that part. And so it was good because the Warriors got to pick and choose, like, I'm ready for ACE, or no, I'm not quite ready. I love what I'm doing in the community. I'm good for right now. So I think that you also could really make it clear in the application of like what we were looking for. And so I don't think there was that many people after we did the application that were ever surprised about the outcome, right? Like,
Right.
there's,
Yeah.
unless we had someone who we hadn't heard from in a long time and they applied. We're like, well, you haven't really been doing the good work. So
Have you been leading a class? Like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that was one of the challenges for sure.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, there's ACE calls. I remember that. Trying to think of some of the fun parts. I
Yeah.
love planning that graduation. I think our graduation just went up a whole notch. I'll give myself a little credit for that because I like to plan parties. And so
Yeah, go ahead. Good, good.
when it came to
Mhm,
like time to plan when I got to be involved in planning that first graduation that I was involved in,
mhm,
um,
mhm.
you know, I remember it was at a church. We were at some
First
church off a
Baptist,
whole street.
First Baptist.
And so we didn't,
Not First Baptist. Oh yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think it might have been
It
First
was
Baptist.
it was their it was like their hall, the
Yeah,
Monty
it was
Center.
lots of big space, but
Right, the Monty
we
Center.
had, it was more of a reception. I don't think we had
Right.
alcohol or anything like that. But that
Hmm.
very first year that I was involved, I remember, we'd really try to like hype up the graduation experience
Raised
and have
church.
that reception afterwards. What
Hmm.
was it?
Raised church.
It was Race Church. You're right. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, but
Yeah.
then third year when we got the Robinson Theater, and I was like,
Hey.
oh, it's gonna be a
Yeah.
party. We're gonna have a
Oh
DJ
yeah.
and we're gonna
Yeah.
have, drinks and food and
Hmm. Hmm.
really giving the workers a chance to feel celebrated. Sorry, I'm
Hmm.
getting all kinds of notifications that just keep making noises. I don't know if y'all can hear that or not, but
Be good.
yeah, that to
Hmm.
me was some of the most fun times. I mean, it was a lot of work to pull off an event of that magnitude with a very small budget,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
we made it work. And I remember those Costco trips of just buying all the Coronas and all the things. um, but it was like that, I think, turned something for us into like, this is a whole thing, because at that point when we made that decision, it was like, this is not just for this graduating class, this is for, we want everybody to come back together. So we were trying to
Hmm.
figure out like, how do we celebrate the whole Warrior Nation, everyone
There
who's
you
a part
go.
of this
Yeah.
work, the host
Hmm.
sites, the
Hmm.
participants, the new graduates, the alumni. Like, how do we get all
Hmm.
those people back together? Because before first class and second class, it was the graduation ceremony, it was for that class. And that makes,
Hmm.
like, there wasn't much beyond that, right? But like, as the
Nope.
classes started growing, we were like, wait, we need to be celebrating everybody, not just the graduating class. Like, yes, that's exciting, but what about these
Hmm.
people who've been doing this for years now? Like, how do we get them
Hmm.
added in
Hmm.
the superlatives and some
Right,
of the
right,
more,
right.
the Raymond D. Patterson Award, the Host
Hmm.
Site of the Year
Hmm.
Award, the Outstanding Class
Hmm.
Participant Award, and really tried to like make sure that we
Hmm.
were celebrating each part of what made what we call the Warrior Nation, the whole
Right.
thing, all the
Hmm.
pieces that came together.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Most
so that was one of my
outstanding
more
host
proud.
site. The host site thing got award. Like all of that. Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. I feel like building
Hmm.
that out, and really making it
Hmm.
the celebration that it's become over the years. was one of my highlights of one of the things I guess I'm most proud about with the program.
I'm glad you mentioned that because recently I heard that someone told Tiffany, a participant, older participant, said they really missed the graduation. They feel like it was the high point of like every year, and they look forward to the dressing up. They look forward to seeing all the awards. Those are exact
Yeah.
like quote from them because it
Oh,
was a big deal to see like everybody that they were part of from their one little host site. They felt connected to like the whole
yeah.
city. So
It
that's
is
a
a
big
big
deal.
deal, and we do all get
Hmm.
dressed up. We don't get to see each other like that often, and so it is nice.
Yeah.
And as an I don't know about you, but as an adult, I don't feel like there's many opportunities to do that, to get dressed up and to, have a night out on the
Mm,
town with
yep.
people that you truly love and you have
Hmm.
something to celebrate together. So, it's almost
Hmm.
like the prom for warriors. It's,
Right.
and you
Because we were
remember,
the vice principal and the principal, so
yeah, there you go.
it
But
closed it.
And if you remember when the pandemic first hit and we switched all the classes onto Zoom, we had
Mm.
that celebration on Zoom.
On
We were
Zoom,
all dressed up.
dressed
And
up,
I mean, it
drinks
was
in hand.
interesting.
Yeah,
Drinks in hand. I
yeah.
think we had a hat competition
The
where
hat
where
competition,
somebody,
yeah,
we
yeah.
made that event as fun as you could make a Zoom event. I mean,
As
that
you
was,
can do, right?
yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't
But
a
it was
Robinson Theater, but hey,
it
we did it.
wasn't, but
Yeah.
we
Hmm.
there was a nice part where at that point, I think Rashad, Ray's son, who
Hmm.
is
Hmm. Right.
involved in that Raymond D. Patterson Award, was able to
There you
tune
go.
in. I think he had moved all the way out to mm, not
Was somewhere
Kansas, somewhere
California or
else.
somewhere?
No,
Hmm.
it wasn't Nebraska. Nebraska.
Okay.
He had
Hmm.
moved out to Nebraska, but he was
Hmm.
able to still give the award to that year's. He was able to tune in through Zoom, which was,
Yeah,
really
that was
cool.
good. Yeah,
And
yeah.
we added in some really cool components like that,
Mhm.
the video contest. I forgot the
Right.
heavy hitter
The heavy
challenge.
hitter, right,
So we put
right.
all the classes back together, but all of that, even
Hmm.
I remember being so overwhelmed because that was in the pandemic. We were going through
Hmm. Hmm.
furloughs and everything at Sports Backers,
Furloughs, right.
but
Mhm.
you know, we, I remember saying like, "There's no way like I can pull this off by myself, or that Tiffany and I can do this and get make it
Mhm.
what we really wanted it to be,
Mhm. Mhm.
without having like some
Mhm.
support." And so we put it out there
Mhm.
to Warriors. We're like, we need some folks to put together this celebration committee to help, and it was them who
Yeah.
came up with that heavy hit. We were like, how are we going to get people hype about this? Like, you can't just say let's have a Zoom celebration in January and people are going to get hype. How do we build up to it? How do we get folks
Mhm.
over the months leading
Mhm.
up excited? And that's what they came up with. But they took it and ran with
Mhm.
this. That was Warrior
Mhm.
led, and that's
Yeah.
why it was so successful. It goes back to that,
Yeah.
like, you
Yeah.
know putting those kind of decisions, and Warrior,
Mhm.
they're willing to do it if you ask. But it's just like with
Mhm.
getting donations, like, you're not going to get them unless you ask, and you're not going to get volunteers to do the things you need them to do unless you
That's
ask.
right.
And so we had to put that ask out there. We're like, there's just no way with us. I think we were literally in furlough time, like,
Mhm.
in the weeks leading up to that. I'm like, there's just like, we're not even allowed to work. Like, so
Right. So how we gonna get it
we
done if you can't?
yeah, so I
Yeah.
remember like having a
Wow.
committee pulled together to be able to make that piece happen. And
Mhm. Wasn't
and I
Ebony on
remember
that committee? It was like three or four of them, wasn't it?
um
Marika,
Emily was a
Ebony.
part of it. Emily helped make
Mhm.
the evaluation. She did all of that in
Mhm.
Adobe for us.
Mhm.
Um, oh my gosh, the instructor from Hickory Hill. Why am I drawing a blank on her name? She's like really good friends with my friend Tava. I'm just drawing a blank. Ugh,
Mm.
this is awful. This is awful that I can't remember her
Not
name.
Kim. I'm thinking Kim, but she was
No,
way back.
no,
That's way.
Kim was the host site partner. It'll hit
Mhm.
me later. It'll hit me later.
Mhm.
But she was a big part of that. She worked. It was a couple of them that worked together on that heavy hitter challenge. Gosh, it's gonna drive me
I'm
nuts.
gonna
That
find that out so we can have that included in the course. Because you just mentioned several things that I need to put into the course too. Like the whole graduation thing, what's that about? And definitely they have
you
the hinder
have to
thing, the
celebrate.
superlatives, that needs to be in there too.
You have
Because
to
all of that
celebrate your
helps
folks.
helps to recognize your volunteers.
It's
That's
the
like
volunteer
part of the whole
appreciation.
management thing. You gotta have that type of stuff in there.
That's when they got
Yeah.
their jackets, like at the
Mm-hmm.
graduation, and that's a big,
Mm-hmm.
that became
That's a big deal.
our token thing. I mean, people were really
Mm-hmm.
excited to earn their jacket.
Mm-hmm.
And so that became something that we did at the graduation.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Man, I'm not gonna be able to rest until I think of her name though.
Yep.
Her class was like her business is something about sevens,
Oh,
seven.
Andre Bowser.
That it's she was on it and she helped this other warrior. Andrea was a part of it, but it wasn't
Andrea
on.
had Hickory Hill, and she was E7 Fitness.
No, that's not
Oh no,
Andrea.
that's
It's
not and Yolanda. My bad.
Yolanda. Yes,
Yolanda. Nah, I said the wrong
I
name. Yeah,
know her
yeah,
name. Like I know who Yolanda is. Like why am I?
yeah,
Yeah, Yolanda stepped up and she was like, "Yeah, I'd love to help out." And so it was
yeah.
Yolanda and Andrea that worked really hard together on that
Right.
heavy hitter
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
they
yeah,
even
yeah,
came up with
yeah.
the idea of having, I think Priscilla helped too. I'm pretty sure Priscilla, because we went out,
Mm-hmm.
we had to
Mm-hmm.
film ourselves giving out the
Mm-hmm.
awards to the participant of
Right.
the year. We had to go to their house. Priscilla and I did that together. So Priscilla was really involved in that committee.
Uh-huh.
Off the top of my
Okay.
head, those are the ones that I remember. It was
Okay.
Emily, Yolanda, Andrea, and Priscilla. And I could be leaving someone out, but man,
Okay.
sorry, Yolanda. That was a total brain fart on
Yolanda,
my
you're gonna hear this.
I know, my bad. At least I knew it was, you thought Andrea, that it was
I
Andrea
did
that
say,
Hickory
see?
Hill.
So
That's
yeah.
Yolanda.
Sorry,
It
Andrea.
is so, it's we're being silly, but it is a lot of people to get to know and keep up with. And so,
Right.
there's
Yes.
one Ricky and there's one Jackie. And at this point,
Mhm.
there's, I don't know how many, I don't know the final count, but we're probably at what, I don't know, 140, 150 number of
150
warriors.
something. I think,
Yeah.
yeah. Last
Okay.
I heard was 154 or something like that.
That sounds about right.
Mm-hmm.
I think last I heard it was like 130s, but I haven't looked in a while. That's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people to actually, work with and remember all the details of where their classes were and what they've been a part of over the years. And it's one of those things I feel bad about, like not being able to always remember their name off the top of
Mm-hmm.
my head or, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot. There's a lot of people. And this is only one part of our professional lives. Like Ricky and I do a lot of other things. Just
I got
like
a
they do
real
a lot of
job.
other things. What'd you say?
I got a real job too.
Yeah. But yeah, it's, we're being silly, but it's hard
Yeah.
to remember everyone and to
Mm-hmm.
remember all the details. So to
Yeah.
that end,
Mm-hmm.
the spreadsheets that we created of all the warrior information, especially in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
when you're first working with a class and you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep track of their host sites and what day and what time, and if they've
Mm-hmm.
attended things, all of that, I
Mm-hmm.
started to create like an overall tracker for each class. And it
Mm-hmm.
was, all of that information was listed. So I could look at a warrior and really, quickly know if they had attended a class, if they
Mm-hmm.
had missed something, if they had turned in something, if they had their, if I already knew their class day and time, or they still hadn't told me. We try,
Mm-hmm.
like that stuff
Host
became really
site, where your
crucial.
host site was, and yeah, all that.
You got to have all of
Yeah.
that like written down
Mm-hmm.
somewhere because you can't keep it all up here. There's too much.
Mm-hmm.
It's way
Yeah.
too much
Mm-hmm.
for that
Mm-hmm.
organization. And when you're working in partnership, I mean, so essentially there's three entities that really made up this work in the beginning, and it was
Mm-hmm.
Fit to Go, Sports Backers, and Richmond City Health Department. So, at least one representative from each of those, sometimes more, but those three entities, we all have different, like there's not one shared platform that we could, like all get onto the same shared drive. So
Mm-hmm.
we started using Google, and that Google Drive to this day is the
Yeah.
way that we were able to, in our own separate, professional
Mm-hmm.
lives, access the same information,
Mm-hmm.
and update things and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
That to this day, from the very
Mm-hmm.
beginning all the way to now has been crucial. And even developing one email, RVA Fitness Warriors at gmail.com. We
Right.
developed that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like class 2 or 3 at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Because we didn't have that at
we
first
developed
either.
that
Yeah.
because it was
Mm-hmm.
too much. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't know who to
Mm-hmm.
go to. Do I email Ricky? Do
Right.
I email Jackie? Do I
Mm-hmm.
email
Right.
RCHT? Or just
Exactly.
having a
Mm-hmm.
volunteer have to figure out who do I reach
Mm-hmm.
out to about whatever it is. They
Right.
had all of their contact information. There's
Mm-hmm.
transparency in that way, but it would seem like too much to expect
But
warriors to always know who to go to. And so having
mm-hmm.
that one email address became
Mm-hmm.
really key. And then, we could,
Mm-hmm.
I could be the one that sort of fielded it. And all right, this is more of a Ricky thing. Hey, Rick, can you respond to that email? They're asking a question about the routine, or, Or if it's something more related to paperwork, I'll respond to it. If they're talking about evaluations, hey, RCHD, jump in and answer such and such email. So
Mhm,
that became
mhm.
really key for us, of having that one platform, that drive, and that and that email address became really key.
Yeah, it did. Yep,
Try to
yep,
make it as
yep.
easy as you can on your volunteers, in
Mhm,
terms, like,
mhm.
it's going to be challenging enough. You're already asking a lot. And so,
Right.
if you can try to make some parts easier, I think that is helpful.
Yeah, keeping paperwork to a minimum in the beginning as best as you can.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
and it's to
Mhm,
your point, like you mentioned the
mm,
PARQ, and
mhm,
combining that with the survey. I mean, yeah, we had these pieces we
mhm.
had to do, but I
Right.
was adamant. I don't want them to have to
Mhm.
give more than one piece of paper to a new participant coming in the door. And
Right.
so,
That was my thing too. Yes. Mhm.
you want to go front and back, fine, but it's going to fit on that
Mhm.
front and back, or we're not doing it.
Mhm.
I've
Mhm.
seen other programs that just surveyed the dickens out of people, and
Mhm.
it's just like, man, they're not a guinea pig. Like, they're coming here to get their workout in. Yes, we
Mhm.
need some basic information. We need them to sign this, a waiver,
Mhm.
or we want to
Mhm.
have the
Mhm.
data, yes, but
Mhm.
you also want to make sure you're only asking the things you really need to know and you're really going
Yeah.
to use.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that was key, of making sure that
Mhm.
that participant signed one page, and that's all that they had to worry about.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff, Jackie.
No.
Yes,
uh,
we get it
yeah.
in.
What else
Yeah.
what else are you thinking about? What else have I shared to
Well,
talk
I'm going to be going back over all of this to glean out questions
about? Okay.
for anybody who is listening. Um, I feel like there's a way you can put a pin in everything to wrap it all up. Everybody else,
Hmm.
I've told them to do this. Like, what is your parting message to whoever is listening, um, from your heartfelt, authentic place? Like
Hmm.
they're thinking about doing this program. They've seen some anecdotal evidence that what we've done here in our area kind of works. People are, doing a lot better. Um, so what do you want to give to them just from off the top of your head? Later on, if you want to come back with something, I can kind of put it in. But what is your parting pin, ribbon,
Hmm.
if you will, on the whole thing? What you've
I
done.
guess my parting, big takeaway, I would say, is that it is so much more than fitness in
Mm,
almost every way, shape. Any person that I've worked in this program eventually figures that out. You baked the personal connections, helping them to understand the community that they're working in, making sure that it, undertrained rather than overtrained. You naturally brought that to the program. But I think the challenge for some folks who may have the fitness expertise that you have might face is being so focused on the fitness that you lose that human component, and you don't teach that to the instructors. You taught them all
mhm,
the things about how to make connections, how to build
mhm,
rapport, how to make yourself human, how to
mhm.
tell them something, be vulnerable. Like, that's one of your
Right,
things.
that's a big one.
that's
Mhm,
that's not fitness. That has nothing to do with fitness, but
right.
it's so important. If
It's
they
one of them
cannot
soft
connect,
skills. Yeah.
it
Mhm,
is, and you do it
mhm,
naturally. So you were able
mhm,
to do it with the Warriors. So that sort of naturally
mhm,
happened. But then you had to teach it to them to be able to do it in their classes, and
mhm,
make sure that their classes were that they were building community in their classes.
mhm,
And so,
mhm,
I think that cannot be stated enough, like the importance of that, because you can know all the fitness in the world, but if
mhm,
if you don't have the personality, or if you're not making connections, it's
mhm,
not going to matter. Like,
mhm,
most of the folks that are going to come to a class like this
mhm,
are not looking to you just for that fitness expertise. They are looking for a place that they can feel comfortable working out.
mhm,
They are looking for
mhm,
someone that makes them want to come back, like that they actually want to see again, that they're not scared or intimidated by.
right.
And I
Mhm,
think the people that are so focused on the fitness, if you only come in and bring that, you might have the best routine in the world, and you might
mhm,
have more knowledge than any of the other instructors around you. And it won't matter if you can't make a connection. I've been to classes where, no one bothered to get to know my name. I couldn't tell you the instructor's name because they didn't introduce themselves. They probably had all the, great expertise, but I never came back because I'm like, I don't feel a part of this. Like, this isn't for me. You don't care about me. So, I want to have an instructor that I'm having fun with. How do you make it fun and enjoyable, relatable? And our warriors that have done that really well, I feel like, are our most successful warriors. The warriors that have went out of their way to like do exercise routines in a circle so that people have that sense of belonging. Or the warriors that, like Cheryl at the library you're sitting in right now, who had that, I don't know what she called it, but it was in her class. She gave this like sort of personal motivational message. And it was mostly women in the class. So she would talk to, the women in a way that made them feel good about themselves before leaving. And that is crucial. Like, I just think that part is so important. I just think if you miss that part, then it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And so you gotta bring that to the program. And doesn't mean the other stuff isn't important. Ricky will drill you on the routine and make sure you know every regression and and how to progress the moves. He brings that expertise, but all of that's really null and void if you ain't got nobody in your class, because they don't really want to be with you, or they don't get a sense of who you are. So I think I think that's important. You really got to make sure you're intentional about teaching that. Ricky just did it. He brought it to the program, and but if that's not a natural thing for you, like, you gotta make sure you're really intentional about figuring out how to do that and teaching the community building aspect of the work.
That's the whole chapter. Thank you. That is another chapter. Like in 8th, they had the whole thing on rapport building, community. That's another chapter. So if you want to come back on to talk some more,
Well, I'm happy to talk more about it. I mean,
because
it really is. It's the
that
individual stuff.
is
Then you got to build relationships with your host site. Like, you want that host site to keep wanting you to come back. They're opening their
right.
doors free of charge. In our scenario, it's all free of charge. And so, you got to build relationships with that person. You got to be able to know how to get in touch with them. And, it can't just be all transactional. It just can't be like, always talking about the class. Like, how do you get to know your host site partner? Are you willing to show up and do their things? I mean, I remember, our connection with Belle Meade. There's things that I've done for them over the years that have nothing to do with this. Like, hey, we're having an Easter egg hunt. Can you donate some candy? Sure. Like, like, do things, help them. It's got to be a two-way street. And so, you gotta be willing to get out there and really get to know the people that you're working with. It just cannot all be, I want to lead this class and I want to do this fitness. Like, and hopefully people will get a lot more out of it than, hopefully they'll walk away having, gotten off medicines. We measure all that. Are they taking less medicine? Are they more active? Are they getting more minutes per week? We ask all these questions. Have they lost weight? All of those things.
All those things,
We ask all of these things, but we also ask, like, how do you feel about your instructor? And do you feel like like, we want to know, is this class contributing to do you have better self-esteem? We ask that too. Like, are you feeling better about yourself? Those things are just as important. So that doesn't happen unless you bring that personal side to it. So I think that's probably my biggest takeaway. I think it'd be easy to overlook. And it's one of those things that it's like the magic sauce. So the instructors that just naturally get it, the instructor is the key. Like, that instructor either makes or breaks the class. And some of them just naturally get it, but those that don't naturally get it, you can help cultivate that. Some people you have to help explain the importance and get their eyes off just the muscles and the movements, right? Like, you might be so focused on that. And I'm sure this has been brought up by other people, but that's the least part of what we're looking for when we look for a new instructor. It's not about who's the most in shape or who has the most experience. It's about the person who can really connect with the community. We can teach you the fitness. I can't teach you how to be a likable person.
Right. Are you a person?
Are you a people person? Do you care about people? No, but we asked one of the questions in the application that I love, and I always read this question. Some of them I will skim over, but the one about what's your fitness motto? We asked that question because it can be telling. You get someone who says go hard or go home, and you're like, yeah, this ain't for you.
Yeah, you can hurt somebody.
Yeah, so, that you get a sense of, we've had some
Mhm,
amazing people, like, people that go on to do bodybuilding, and, some of
mhm,
them can do both. Some of them can be that,
mhm,
super fit,
mhm,
super, amazing at all the
mhm,
fitness stuff and be really good at the community building stuff. But
mhm,
I keep an extra eye on those people that come in with that. It's like they're all about the fitness, and you got to help them understand that ain't gonna kick it and where we're going. Like it ain't gonna work. You're gonna scare people
yeah,
away. Like put those muscles away. We have
mhm,
instructors, Terica, who will tell you
mhm,
she's got an amazing, she's super fit. Her body composition is exactly what you want. But she
mhm.
puts it underneath jogging pants and a big old t-shirt. And
She will. Yep,
and if you
intentionally. Yeah.
intentionally. You ask her why.
Mhm,
She's like, I want people to be comfortable. Like this is what they're wearing to class.
mhm,
And and so
mhm.
she doesn't feel the need to show off her,
Yeah.
what she's
Mhm,
got going on because
mhm.
it's not about that. It's not about them trying to look like her.
Right. She
She
knows it
wants them
can
to
be
feel comfortable.
intimidating even to some people. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
That's good.
all right. That was a long last thought. So I'm sorry. But
Well, thank you because that thought led into the next chapter that has to be included on community engagement, community building, building and establishing rapport. So all that's going to be it. It has to be included too. I have more work to do.
as
Right.
always, the work is never
So,
done. When it's important work, it's never done.
yes. So with that, I'm going to end right here the recording. Talk to y'all later on the other end.